back with Bob Van Kirk and his newest book, Hog Heaven. Good morning.
Good morning.
We
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, always a pleasure. We were just going through
all of the process. Yeah, we were just looking about this book here, but let's start at the beginning. As it typically works here. So now this is your third book.
Yes.
And we'll get into the specifics of Hog Heaven in just a little bit here, but tell us what you did before you started writing and what kind of led to the crazy world of fiction writing.
Good. I was in the investment business for 35 plus years. And my wife and I and our family, we lived in different cities, New York, LA, Seattle, different places. And along the line, I always enjoyed writing. What I would do is when we'd have family occasions, birthdays, weddings, not funerals, big family events, I would write something for the group. And usually it was funny. Sometimes they just sort of stare at me like, what is he writing? Anyway, so that sort of piqued my interest. And before I left the investment business, at one point I was working for J.P. Morgan Chase, and they had bought the firm that I was associated with, and my job was going away. So I went to an outplacement firm. This was in Columbus, Ohio. It was January, and it was snowing, and I'm sitting in this outplacement office. So I'm supposed to be dialing for dollars, calling around, looking for another job. And I'm sitting there, I thought, you know, I've thought about writing a novel for a long time. This is the place to start. I got time on my hands. So I literally got out the proverbial yellow tablet and quick pen, and I started the first chapter of what eventually became Wormwood, High Crimes, and a Bunch of Misdemeanors.
Your first book.
Yeah.
My first book. That took 6 years to write. And so I worked a few more years, and I'd write on the weekends. And then I retired in '09 from the investment business and went full-time into this business. And that's what I do every day, I write.
Now, we were talking off camera before we got started on here. You've always got about 5 different projects circling around in different stages of development.
Yes.
Now, when you wrote that first book, was it just that first book you were concentrating on those years, or were there other things you were also?
No, I was so new and had not a clue how to do this. In fact, I ended up hiring a woman out of San Francisco, a seasoned editor, who was recommended to me by a friend of mine. And so I sent her the first draft, and it was 140,000 words, way too long. Should be more than 100,000. And so she reads it, she writes back to me. Actually, it was a letter. It was 6 pages long, single-spaced, and the first page was what she liked about the book.
The first page.
The first page. The next 5 is all the things she hated about my book. And it broke my heart, because when first you write something like that, you love every word of what you write.
Right, it's your baby.
It is.
Right.
It's like your children. You do not want to cut one word out of it. And I had to cut thousands of words out of that story. But it was extremely helpful. I learned a lot. It went through, 5 more drafts until I finally got to the version that's out there today. But that's all I could only work on one at a time then.
Yes.
And now what I do is, so if I finish a book, like when I finished Wormwood Beyond Dead, finished the first draft, then I start editing that. Then I get tired of editing because it's work. And then I start the draft of a next book and a next book. And I go back between editing and writing first drafts.
So now your first 2 books, Wormwood, High Crimes, and a Bunch of Misdemeanors, and Wormwood Beyond Dead, both take place in the fictional town Wormwood, if you can follow. And so this was a whole world that you created within your twisted mind.
Yes.
But now your new book, Hog Heaven, which has been available for the past year now, now this takes place in New Bern, North Carolina.
Yes.
So now tell us about the process of writing a story in a real place and straying away from, I guess the formula, you would say, of those first 2 books.
Well, what I did was I decided I would, at the end of the second book, you have the protagonist, the private detective, Ty Svensson is his name. He's in the first 2 Wormwood books.
Yes.
And he becomes involved with a neurosurgeon, a gorgeous gun-toting neurosurgeon out of Pittsburgh.
Of course.
When they're in Wormwood.
Right.
She moves to New Bern. And so for the start of the third book, he comes to visit her. So he got a little cottage along the Neuse River. She's living in the condo downtown. And that's the start of the story.
Your microphone there.
Uh-oh. What do you want me to do with this? Right
Yeah, just clip that onto the,
Sorry I did that.
turn around
Down
the
here.
other,
Let me do
turn around.
It's upside down now. Well, it's a good thing you can write, Bob.
I never wanted to be an actor. Trust me. I'll leave that up to you. Yeah.
Well, now you have done some acting because we did collaborate
Yeah, I
on a
saw the
series of videos
Yes.
to promote the Wormwood books, and
Yes.
which were written by, the promos were written by you, and we filmed them all around New Bern here.
Yes. Keith, so you all know this, was the director and videographer. And they were 8, maybe minute and a half
Yeah.
pieces to this thing. So it was maybe 4 or 5 sentences for each one that I wrote, and I had to remember the lines because I had to star in it because it was low budget. I could only afford to pay him.
True.
Talk about low budget. And we did the whole thing in one day. And Keith, you were very kind because
Thank you.
we'd start one, and I'd totally screw up my lines that
Right.
I'd written. And then he'd say, now, Bob, let's try that again. And that'd be 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. It was embarrassing how
It was
bad I
always it was always just one more time. Let's do that
Yeah.
one more time.
One more time. And then during the day, Keith would say, Bob, we need to get your energy level up. Because I'm sitting there like this.
Here, drink this Red Bull.
It's exhausting.
It was
It is work.
exhausting.
It is work.
Yeah.
But you know, the whole point of those videos was to try and get the flavor, the tone,
Yeah.
the humor of the books that you write. How would you describe, I guess, this, because even though, like I said, this is not taking place in Wormwood, this is following the same character. But how would you describe the tone and the feel of your writing?
They're all humorous crime novels. So they rely on humor and satire. For example, in this story, I'll tell you what's in this story. We have a murder in front of City Hall. We have the most polluted hog farm in Craven County. We have the hunt for an embezzler. We have a minister's wife who's invented a whole new way of saving sinners' souls.
That intrigued me when I read that.
We have dietary supplements play a big factor in this story. What else is in there? We have Chinese communist businessmen looking for a great investment.
Wow.
Chainsaw art, and of course a love story.
That's a lot for 376 pages.
There's a lot of stuff.
Now, let me ask you, because when I was reading the synopsis for this, and again, all these components are so unrelated to each other, it's very intriguing. I'm just dying to know how they all tie together. And is this something, the first thing I thought of was, this could be a stage play. Is this something that could be turned into a stage play?
I have no idea. I'd have to rely on your expertise.
Yeah,
for that.
a nice crime.
It all comes together at the end. And so the way I write these is I think of sort of what are the 2 or 3 themes I want to have in a book. So for example, the one I'm working on, one of the next new books has got political correctness on a college campus and the solar energy business and the country of Uzbekistan.
Uzbekistan.
But it all takes place back in Wormwood. But there's scenes from Uzbekistan, one of the stand countries, like Afghanistan, and Iranistan, and all the stands.
Right.
I just joking about
The stand countries.
And so what I do is I think, what are the themes? And then I visualize how is it going to end? I start at the ending in my head. And then once I get that figured out, in very general terms, in this case it was a dinner party out at Hog Heaven. And then I would start chapter 1 and I start creating the characters. How am I going to maneuver them all the way to the end and get them to the final climactic scene? At least that's what I do.
Cool.
Everybody does it differently.
Now, how does someone go about getting a copy of
Yes.
Hog Heaven or Wormwood?
And the Wormwood books.
Yes, go to robertvankirk.com. That's RobertVankirk. .com. That's my website, and which was newly designed by a class at the University of Mount Olive, which I could tell you about on another time if you'd like. And on there is the books. There's summaries of the books. You can order the books. There's the video of Wormwood is on the website. There's a blog that I've started writing, humorous blog that's on there. So everything is in one place.
All right.
I have to say, when I picked up this book, I said I was going to share this on the air. You know, I flipped it around to take a look at the back here, and the very first words that I saw when I flipped this around here and saw that was hog testicles stolen. Flipped it around, and those are the first words that caught my eye, is hog testicles stolen. So if
Now
that
you have to
intrigued
read
you,
it.
now you have to read it.
Now you have to read it.
So
Right.
you know where that's going to go.
Thank you.
I
know.
was giggling when I was reading it. I was like, oh my goodness. Especially the woman who has a solution to fix everyone's sins. I mean, very interested in that one.
The minister's wife.
Yeah.
Yes, she has a unique way of saving souls. Memorable.
Do you ever write something and then look at it and say, well, that's just too ridiculous?
No, not that. But actually, I actually wrote an entire book. It was the fourth book, and I got to the end of it, and I didn't like it.
The whole
Wow.
book.
I wrote a whole novel, and I still don't like it.
Is there
It's I might take pieces of it for another
Okay.
book,
Yeah.
but I didn't like it. But yeah, sometimes I get into a scene and I create something, and I thought, nah, that just doesn't work real well.
But you wrote an entire book, and then it wasn't even that you re-edited it afterwards.
No.
You just said, none of this, no.
It's not
didn't li-
working.
If I didn't like it, why would anybody else like it?
Right.
It didn't fit with all the other books.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's on the shelf, so to speak.
Do you ever think you might stray into a different genre of writing, whether it's, I don't know, horror or science fiction? Do you ever, or do you feel like this is your voice?
I really like this. I like humor. I have a lot of favorite authors, Carl Hyacin, Dave Barry, Christopher Buckley. There's a lot of really terrific humorous writers out there who I admire. And there's enough serious writers on all the other genres and there's lots of them that they don't need another one. I mean, they're already really good. So I like the humor part.
The world
My
needs
goal in life
levity.
is to make people laugh. That's
The
pretty
world
much
needs
it.
levity.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And who are some of your favorite comedians, real quick?
Will Ferrell, I like a lot. Chris Rock, he's very good. There's a whole list of them. I like Will Ferrell because he does really crazy movies.
Yes.
And he's a comedian. And they sort of fit. I go all the way back to the Marx Brothers. As
They
sort of-
are absolutely
When I was in
marvelous.
high school, I used to watch, and they
Fantastic,
were
yeah.
old then.
And real quick, the website?
RobertVanKirk.com.
Thanks, you, Bob.
Thank you
Great
so
work.
much.
Thank you.
Go to the book, Hog Heaven.
Thank you very much.